Alright, welcome to another tutorial. This is going to be about the basics of HTML and CSS. We will go into how fundamentals of websites and this connectivity part works. Moving forward, we will learn basics of HTML where we will cover basic tags and how different tags brings different content onto the page. After that, we will learn some fundamentals of CSS, how styling works, and then we will learn how to actually style a page with a small demonstration. All right. So this is going to be a beginner friendly. I'll be covering everything from like scratch, and hopefully it will be like easily understood by everyone. So let's not take much time and let's head into the introduction part. So once again, welcome to the session. This is going to be a 1 to 2 hour session, and it will cover everything you need to know about HTML and CSS to start off. All right. So first of all, as I said, we will cover some fundamentals. Let's have a look at what actually programming is. All right. So programming is a profession that deals with writing code. Okay. So you must have known that already. So basically, programming can be of different sorts where you write different types of code. So anything that deals with communicating with a computer, right? Writing any language that is actually understood by the computer is known as programming, right? So that would be it. Let's move on to the next point. Various trends that have emerged in today's era is machine learning, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing, right? So all of these rely on the fundamentals of programming. Everything has been programmed from like decades ahead, right? And now it is in action. Now it is in an effective way where we are noticing how big everything has grown, right? So programming basically lets us create something as huge as machine learning algorithms to artificial intelligence that we can interact with, right? Then the future is also going to be very much linked with programming. Everything is moving onto the web, right? You have various applications to do all sorts of work. So we are going to that programming side. We are moving very technical now in this generation. So it is a very feasible uh, choice of path, right? If you are good with communicating, like just working with the computer, you should give it a shot to learn some coding languages and move ahead, right? So that would be like basics of programming and what it is and how it is affecting the industry right now. So let's move out. Okay. And let's cover the sessions focus that we are going to have today. All right. So the focus is going to be on the fundamental technologies that help us develop websites. All right. So we will cover HTML and then CSS. JavaScript won't be inclusive in this particular tutorial, but there is already a YouTube video published for JavaScript. All right. So once you have covered HTML, CSS, you're good to go with learning JavaScript, and then you can claim that you know the fundamental technologies of working with websites. All right. So that is going to be the session's focus. So now let's try to get into it and let's learn about the fundamentals, like what actually happens at a lower end. Perfect. So what are websites? First of all, right? So websites are nothing but collection of web pages created and made available on the internet. So it is saying key websites are not nothing but collection of different web pages. So if you want to visualize, we can visualize Instagram.com. And when we go to Instagram.com, it has various web pages, right? One to log you in, one to create a new account for you, one to show you the feed, then one to just give you a glimpse of your account. So there are various different web pages. When everything is combined together, it is going to form a website. All right. So that is a website. And the web over which we host everything, right? That is how we are able to access Instagram.com. So web has a collection of websites. So that is what we understand by websites, right? So every organization have their own website, and the web entirely gives them a platform to host those websites. Cool. Then browsers are tools that lets us access the websites. All right. So this is one kind of a browser. We can move out of this. Now, right now I'm in a Edge browser. You can use any sort of browser you like. I have opened up a website. All right. It is showing me a web page of MDN. I can go to different web pages that is like associated, linked with MDN, right? I can go back and forth, whatever navigation that browsers let us do. It is a good medium to communicate with a website or a web page, right? So browser is something that lets us access to different web pages and websites. Obviously, we will require some internet connection. That is how the data actually translates and comes to our device. Cool. So everything, how it is working, right? How internet works. Let's try to understand that part as well. All right. So step one. So this is the year 1983 when internet was first proposed. Now, a lot of people confuse internet with a lot of things, but actually internet is something that just is a hardware that connects all kinds of computing devices on the planet today. All right. So it is the wires, the cables, the wireless networks, everything that is working, the hardware, right? That is the part of internet. Then comes World Wide Web, WWW. It is the software that is baked on top of this hardware. All right. So WWW gives us a interface to work with internet, right? So this is the hardware connection. This consists of all the wires, all the wireless networks, all the ways, all the sorts of ways that is helping us connect one device to another device over a distance, right? And this is an interface that lets us like work with the internet in a much intuitive manner. All right. Then uh, next comes ki how do we like create websites, right? So there are two ends to this: a client end, which is known as a service acquirer, meaning a client or a consumer. All right. Uh, is like basically there to consume some service. They are acquiring some service. They want to get some service. Then there is a server end that provides those services. All right. So as a consumer, as a simple client, I want to consume. Let's go to Instagram.com. Right. I want to consume the contents of Instagram.com. Fine. So this is how it is going to work for me. All right. So if I like go to this URL, this is going to let me see the contents. I want to consume some content, and Instagram.com is going to provide that content. So this is the basic idea behind like the client and server relationship. So let's move out of this. Let's actually deep dive how this client server model actually works. All right. Yeah. So client server model is a collection of devices that actually wants to consume some kind of service, right? So a client can have a laptop, a mobile device, a desktop, and whatever computing device that has access to internet. They send in requests for particular services, right? I want some sort of service. What do I want? I can go over here. I want to see maybe content categories, right? So if I make a request, it is going to go to the backend, the server front that MDN has hosted somewhere. And it is going to take that request, it is going to generate a response for that, and it is going to send me back that response that I actually see on the viewport right now, right? This is the response that has been prepared by the MDN browser, by the MDN server. All right. So this is the way we communicate back and forth, right? we send in requests. If the request is valid, an appropriate response is prepared for that, and that is sent back to our client devices. So this is the essential part how we actually work with client server models. There are various things like URL mapping, right? If you see, if I click on something else over here, the URL for the uh, page is going to change as well, as it is going to hit a different port now, and it is going to fetch me a different kind of response, right? So that is how the request varies, and based on that, the response varies. All right. So let's move ahead now and actually let's see the front end and back end part, right? So this is basically the client end, whatever the client actually sees. If I go to the browser, so this design, this layout that I am actually able to see right now, it is provided by like it has been developed by MDN, right? So it is a front end structure that they created for their users to see, right? To make it more user friendly. All right. So anything that adds like animations, content, organization, or like graphical stuff that makes the website look pretty, right? That is like the part that is covered in the front end. So we have JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. These are fundamentals that work in front end uh, category. Then we can go to backend, and this focuses on code building, debugging, database management. All right. So whatever data we are sending to the server, it has to be saved somewhere and it has to be properly maintained. So all those relations are maintained at the backend, which is known as a server. All right. So there are different programming languages that you can go with. There is Node.js. There is Python-based backend languages like Django or Flask. Even Fast API is there. Then we have Java-based backend languages. All right. So I already have a tutorial on Node.js, and if you already have some knowledge of JavaScript, or if you plan to watch JavaScript after this one, then it would be a good transition to go to Node.js to continue your programming career. All right. So let's move out. That was all about the fundamentals that we had to see. Now we will try to cover HTML and CSS, which are the fundamentals of front end technologies. All right. So over here, the core front end, right? How can we create a static website? Let's not worry about creating some robust system as we are beginners. How can we create a simple website that does simple things, right? So we need to know about the basics of HTML and CSS to create simple static websites. All right. So we will start with HTML first, and there is like the breakdown of what these technologies actually do. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the core structure of a web page. All right. So HTML code is something that gives a skeleton, a structure to our web page. All right. Whatever code we write. Then CSS is something that we use. The full form is Cascading Style Sheet that helps us provide layout and design to a web page, right? It also helps us make the page responsive across different devices. We will learn about responsiveness. Let's skip it for now. The JavaScript stands, or like JS stands for JavaScript, and it adds interactivity to a web page. Like if you want to capture some events on a button click, right? If I click on this button, I want to see certain action to happen, right? It does happen. So if I click on the back button, it showed me an action. If I click on the front button, it is going to give me an interactive feedback, right? The UI is changing according to my kind of interaction. All right. So that is how like JavaScript works and how it makes its presence in the front end category. Let's go into HTML now. Let's try to study HTML basics. Before that, I would want to show everyone that I have a code repository set up over here. I'll zoom in a little bit more. So it is essentially it is an empty directory that I have opened up in VS Code. Hopefully everyone has VS Code installed. If you don't, you can just search this and the very first link will take you to uh, like how you can install like Visual Studio Code, right? Install it. So this should like download it for you. Right now I have already downloaded and it is working, so I'll cancel the download for my system. And let's go back to the PPT. Actually, let's go back to the directory. So it is an empty directory basically. I just have a mocks folder. Inside of it, I have some things that I'm going to work with, right? I am going to use these materials to actually take this tutorial forward. All right. So let's close those things for now. Let's come back to the presentation first and let's try to get the basic idea of HTML first. So HTML is a document that provides structure to a web page. All right. So whatever code you write inside of HTML, the file should have an extension of .html. All right. And whatever document you write, whatever code you write, it is known as a HTML document. All right. Moving forward, an HTML document consists of different tags with different significance and meaning. So HTML code is written basically using tags which translate into elements of a code. All right. So we will study tags more closely, and we will even have like basic tags that we want to cover throughout the tutorial. Then let's start now. Let's take a glimpse at how like coding works. HTML document. How does it look like? It looks like something like this. So I won't worry you too much about this. I'll just go back to the VS Code. Over here, if you want to code along, you can code along. All right, you can pause the tutorial in between. You can try to do all the like changes I'm making to the repository. You can do it in your system as well. I'm going to create an index.html. All right. Now, since I gave it a .html extension, the file system knows that this is going to be an HTML document, and I have extensions over installed in VS Code that gives me this good-looking icon for it, right? So this is how the HTML logo actually works. So if I want to generate an HTML boilerplate, I just want to write an exclamation mark. And if I enter the exclamation mark, it is going to generate a boilerplate for me that I can use to create my HTML document. All right. So it has like some things. Let's analyze all these things and let's try to understand their meaning. All right. So first of all, the very first line is going to be the declaration part. Okay. What do I mean by declaration? This is to tell to the browser that it is a HTML document. The document type is HTML. All right. Then we have actually the HTML code that we write inside of HTML opening tag. Okay. This is a tag. Then there is HTML closing tag. So it is one type of tag that lets us write HTML code. All right. Now, by default, HTML tag takes two kind of like inputs, a head tag and a body tag. So by convention, head tag has all the metadata that you want to store. All right. If you want to link some file that like a CSS file or a JavaScript file, you're going to do that over here inside of the head tag. All right. And other things related to the metadata and how you set metadata, right? If you want, I can show you a metadata for description. So there is emit abbreviation, which is a part of VS Code itself, and it lets me like do these shortcuts basically. So I can add a metadata that is going to be a type that is going to have a name of description and whatever content I share, right? This is a HTML CSS tutorial, right? So that is the description for this document, right? So any data that you want to attach with your document, you can like add that inside of it. It has other uses as well, but for now this should be good enough. And we'll change this to tutorial. And uh, what does it change actually? Let's revert back. Let's go to live server. Let's see how live server is something that I have installed using an extension. All right. and it lets me basically see my HTML code reflect on a browser itself. All right. So if I make any changes, right now the document is visible over here. If I make changes over here, uh, like I did was tutorial, right? And if I save it, if I go back to the browser, it is going to reflect those changes on the browser seamlessly. Perfect. So it is a great tool if you're working with HTML, CSS, as it lets you like it updates constantly whenever you make some changes and you save your file. All right. Now body tags. It has a opening tag. All right, and it has a closing tag. So body tag is a place where you write your document. Whatever you write inside of the body tag is actually going to show on the screen. All right. So these are conventions. You can actually write anything over here and it might possibly show, right? It is showing because HTML is very lenient. It doesn't actually check a lot of things and through errors, right? It does not do a lot of errors. So you can work with anything. If you remove even the entire body tag, it is going to work. But that is not the idea. We want to follow the conventions, right? Whichever is a good manner, whichever is a accepted convention in the industry, we want to go ahead and we want to work with that convention itself. So body tag is something that is going to take all the contents that you actually want to show on the screen. So we will place all those contents over here. All right. So this was the basics, how the structure actually works. There is combination of opening tag and closing tag, and it takes in children kind of thing, right? You can visualize HTML tag as the parent tag, and you can visualize the head and body as children tag, right? So that is kind of a relationship going on. So we studied the HTML syntax. Let's move out of this now. Okay, let's go back. Let's now cover some basic tags in HTML. All right. So here are the some basic tags. We have tags for setting headings. All right. So heading tags are something that lets you set like headers, kind of like titles for your document. So if you want to have some headers, there is a sequence of tags starting from H1 going up till H6. All right. We will see this in VS Code. Then we have something like paragraph tag. All right. This lets us basically create paragraphs. So if we created a header, like a heading, maybe title for an article, then we can add content of that particular article using paragraph tags. All right. Now let's actually see this in action. I have like HTML files ready for me to pick up, right? So I'll pick up this code. I'll take it to the file. Okay. What I did was Control P. This gave me like a way to switch between the different files that I have inside of this directory. And then I just saw the name of the index.html that is inside of the mocks folder. And then I switched it, right? That I then I moved into the index.html that I wanted to take code out of, right? And then I did Control Tab that basically brought me back, right? So I can switch between the active files that are there inside of the uh, active tabs right now. So I can paste that over here, whatever content we like picked up, and if I save this, if you can see, there is a sequence of H tags. H stands for heading. Once like the number stands for the sequence. All right. So H1 is going to be the like the most priority based header, right? So it is going to have a lot of weight and it is going to have a variation of styles, right? So this is kind of bold, it is larger. Then similarly, it is like bold and like a little less larger, and the uh, pattern like follows, right? For all the sequence. So that is the use of like having heading tags. All right. Now we saw this has a opening tag, it has a closing tag, but not everything in HTML has a opening and closing tag. We will study about like some special tags that are self-closing. Okay. So let's go back to the PPT. We covered heading tag. Let's try to cover paragraph tag now. All right. So if I switch between the files, I have some paragraph over here and I can use that over here. So if you can see, I ignored this at first, but this is how you write comments inside of HTML document. So this is not actually going to render on the screen itself. We actually saw that. And if I save this now, it should basically give this paragraph content onto the screen. And this is also some random text that we can generate using a lorem. Lorem is an emit tool that gives us like free characters to work with, right? So if I say lorem 50, it is going to return 50 words, a collection of 50 words to me in form of a paragraph. Now I can switch back and yeah, I'm able to see that content onto the screen. Moving back into the presentation now, we have something known as unordered list. Then we have ordered list. All right. So if we want to create an sequence, then we usually go ahead with creating uh, unordered or ordered list. So we will see how this works actually. So first, let's study the unordered list. I'll paste it over here. So there is a comment for you to use. Then we have the opening tag for the unordered list. U stands for unordered, L stands for list. Then we have the closing tag for the same. Then we have a list item, like collection of three list items, and it is like generated using li tag, right? This stands for list, represents list item, right? So you can basically use this tool's MDN reference, right? It is taking content from the MDN itself and it is going to show you some meaning related to these tags. So it is good tools that can help you like learn meanings of different tags. All right. And if I save this now and we go to the browser, we are going to see this bullet point format of sequencing, right? Since it is unordered, it is not tracking the order. All right, it is unordered, so it just uses bullet points for the sequence. Now, if we go back and we pick up an ordered list, it is not going to do something very drastically different. Just it is going to track the order of sequence. So if we go back to the browser, it is going to count the list items. That is the basic difference. Nothing great. All right. So let's go back. We already saw list item when we worked with unordered and ordered list. Now let's study about the uh, special tags kind of, right? So one is break rule. Okay. This is used to create a new line basically in your HTML document. And there is horizontal rule that helps you create a horizontal line in your HTML document. So let's have a look at this by using this, right? So first, let's work with horizontal rule because this is something that is going to show on the screen, right? So let's create a horizontal rule that is going to help us separate the code that we wrote, right? So the heading is going to be separated, then the paragraph is going to be separated, and similarly, we can separate the two types of lists. Now, coming back to the browser, we are able to see this line, right? Horizontal line that is dividing the content of the HTML document itself. So this is the use. As you can see, there is no closing tag for this. Even if you put one, it is not going to work. It says key, it doesn't require a closing tag. All right. So we do not want to use this, although you can use a closing tag like this as well. When we will study other tags like image, you will see this kind of declaration, right? So this implies that it is a self-closing tag basically. So it is not really required in HTML, so let's not worry. Okay, something really changed over here. I need to fix it back. Now the document is going to show properly. Good. So that was horizontal rule. Now let's work with break rule, right? So by break rule, we want to create new lines. Right now, the paragraph is in a continuous order. What if we want a break rule? After each exclamation mark, we want to break. like into a new line. So I can take this from here and yeah. So we want this over here. Now if I save the file, we go to the browser again and we see the changes are being reflected, right? The paragraph initially was continuous. Now there is a rule break that puts all the content after the exclamation mark into a new line. Perfect. So that is basically the simple tags that you can cover in HTML. We will learn about more tags moving forward. Now, learning about attributes. Okay, so attributes are something that are associated with a tag. All right. So, firstly, we can have a look at style attribute. It allows us to add inline styling. Okay, so what do I mean by inline styling? If I want this paragraph tag to be of color red, right? So I can write color. Okay, I can give it a colon. I can separate it with a color, and I can give this semicolon. All right. So this is a way to write CSS, but inside of your HTML document itself. All right. So style tag takes some value and it is going to take that value and it is going to add that property to this tag. So if we go back to the browser, it is going to reflect that and now the color of the paragraph is red. All right. So that is the use of style attribute. So it is used to add inline styling. Okay, let's go back. Then we have SRC. Okay, so source attribute. It basically lets us embed different contents. Okay, so what do we mean by content? It can be something that is locally present inside of our working directory. Like there is an image over here. If we take that image into the working directory, right? We do not want it inside of the mocks. Now, if I want to show this image, then I can go to the HTML file that is inside of the mock and I can pick this image path. All right, just to demonstrate to you how the source actually works. Now, since we are separating our content, I will create another horizontal rule over here. I'll paste the image tag over here and we can see it is a special tag as well. It does not have a closing tag. All right. So you can declare it in this manner, or you can write a forward slash at the end. It doesn't make a difference if you are working with HTML. Okay. So it takes two attributes. It can take like several other attributes, but our focus is going to be on SRC. That basically lets us add kiosk.png. What is this? If I control click on this, so it is going to take us to this PNG file. So this is something that I want to link to my HTML document, right? So if I save this now, what I want is I want this image to be shown onto the screen and yet we get that behavior, right? That image is being rendered because we gave it a source that was pointing to the destination of this, right? Locally, kiosk.png is in the same directory. So I did not have to work with different conventions. Basically, it took this as a uh, default thing, right? So we do not need to place that since it is in the same directory, same folder. Cool. And it took that image and it inserted that inside of our HTML. And that is how we are able to view that. All right. Alt, alt attribute is something that goes along with image. This is basically if the image is not found, it is going to alternatively load this on the screen so that people have something to view, right? If it breaks, right? This path is incorrect now. There is no file with this name, right? It says unable to open kiosk.svg. So if I save this now, if I go back to the browser, it is going to break since there is no file with that name itself, right? And it is going to resort to the alternate attribute value. Fine. So I gave it a value of image. I can make it kiosk since we are working with kiosk image, right? So that is the idea behind alternate tag, right? Attribute defines the alternative text description of the image. So that is the idea behind it. Let's revert back and it should now show on the screen. Let's go back. We studied SRC. well and good. Now let's study href. Okay, so it stands for hypertext reference, and it allows you to link different web pages inside of your HTML document itself. So if we like I said, a website is created with a collection of web pages, right, of an organization. So if they want to link such web pages into one another, if they want to create that navigation, then href attribute is very much required because this lets us link different web like HTML documents basically. So we will have a look at an simple example. We'll go back to the index that is inside of the mocks folder, and we are going to pick up this anchor tag. Okay, so we'll cover this now. Let's create a new horizontal rule because that is something we are doing just for a good separation. And this is something like a link, right? It is creating a link. So anchor stands for like A stands for anchor, and it basically is a hyperlink that can refer, like, that can point to a different HTML document and the contents inside of it. So I have a anchor tag. The opening tag has something called as an attribute. The attribute is of type href, and I have a value that is basically going to point to the Google's search page, right? So we want to reference this. We want to point this document inside of our HTML. All right. So write Google. I can write search page, and I can put the closing tags. And now, if I save this file, I go to the uh, browser itself. We can see that anchor tag is loading right now. And if I click on this anchor tag, it is going to give us the same behavior. But you need to notice something. Right now we are in a single tab. If I click on this, it is going to reload in this specific tab itself, right? So maybe that is something we did not want, right? If we want to link to something, we might want to link it to another tab. So how can we do that? We can do that with another attribute that is known as target, and we can give it values. See, I am getting like suggestions for the values. I can just use the blank underscore blank value, and now when I click on this, it is going to always open in a new tab. All right. So that is the behavior, and that is the property basically that we add to this anchor tag, and that lets us tweak the behavior of the anchor tag. All right. So coming back to the presentation, we studied style, we studied SRC, we studied href. Method is something that goes along with forms. All right. So I don't really have a form ready with me, so I will create one right now. I can make a comment. So there is a shortcut for that. If you press control and hold it, and if you press forward slash, then it is going to generate a small snippet where you can write the comment itself, right? Form. Now, if I write form, Emmet is going to give me like suggestions for the boilerplate, right? So it is going to generate something. Action is something that we do not want to study. Method is something that we want to see. So method basically takes kind of uh, HTTP methods kind of values, right? So the form, whatever things that you take inside of the form is something that lets you create basically uh, place for users to give input, right? So whatever input you take, and if you want to make a request to a server, it is going to be of method post. So that is the idea behind this. Right now, there is no functionality in this form, so I will remove this part of the code. And for now, let's not get into like what actually method will do because we will need a backend for that to actually demonstrate that. So we'll skip that for now. And that is how we have like cleared the basics of HTML. We studied how opening tags, closing tags are there. Then there are some special tags which are self-closing. Then we studied how these tags and the content inside of it both combine and become a element, right? So if I come over here, this is an element. This piece of code is an element, and I need to revert this back. This is an element. Everything like every different tag becomes an element and it is rendered. All right. So let me just put this on mute. Yeah. So that is the idea. This is the opening tag. This is the closing tag. The content inside of the tag entirely becomes an element. All right. Coming back to the presentation now, and we will move ahead and we will learn about link and image tags. Okay. In a hurry, I already explained the two. All right. So link tag is something that lets us link to different HTML documents. Let it be our own web page or someone else's web page, right? Right now we use like a Google's web page for referencing. So doesn't matter. Anchor works flawlessly. Then we worked with image tag to insert image inside of our HTML document. So we already studied these two. So we will move ahead now and we will go to important topic now, which is semantic tags. Okay. So semantic tags are nothing but like a combination of tags that basically gives a better meaning to your HTML document. Okay. What do I understand by meaning? All right. So whenever a document reaches the browser, all right, it is passed by the browser itself. We can see all the elements, whatever code we have written for the HTML. It is showing inside of the browser's inspection tool, right? How did I go into it? You can right click, you can go into the inspection section, enlarge this a little bit, and we can see different things about the document itself. The entire HTML code is over here. So this is one element, this is another element, the styles that are associated with it. So these are default styles that out of the box come with these tags, right? Because these are HTML tags and it has different significance. So if I click on this, the styles are going to vary a little bit, right? So that is the idea behind like HTML document and using the right tags for everything. Right now, the distribution of code in this document file is not great. Okay, it is showing me some kind of error. Why is that? You can hover over here. Must be paired with missing body. Okay, body is missing. It is same, but we have body over here. Acha, it was an HR tag. I like by mistake I made it into body tag. All right. So we have the right opening body tag over here. We have the right closing body tag over here, and it is going to be a proper document now. So even though I have tried to structure this using HR, this is not a conventional way. If we want to work with semantic tags, we actually work with different tags that have like meanings to the browser. All right. So right now, this tag will imply some meaning to the browser. The browser will know कि H1 is a kind of heading tag and one is a higher priority. So it is going to be the like upmost header of the web page kind of. So that is something that is the browser is doing that at the backend, right? It is trying to understand your document, and by that understanding itself it tries to rank your web page. So the better you organize your code, the better you help the browser to understand your HTML document, the better SEO or search engine optimization or basically the search rank it will allot to your web document. Fine. So semantic tags are something that lets us define meaningful layout, meaningful distribution of HTML tags. All right. So I have boilerplate ready. We will create a new file so that we take everything piece by piece and HTML. All right. So right now we have two semantic files. One is outside in the root directory. One is inside of the mocks. that we are going to use for example purpose. All right. So I can generate an HTML boilerplate over here. I can just say semantics and I can save this document. And since the previous page is running on the port, now I close that live server. If I reload now, it is not able to find any page now. All right. So that is the idea. Where once I go live again with this new page, it is going to show that since there is no content except of the title of the page, there is nothing showing on the screen. All right. Now let's go back and forth. We want to close this HTML files as we already covered those. And let's take this uppermost part. All right. And we know everything that we want to show on the screen goes inside of the body tag. So we'll paste that over here and we will have a look at how it is going to behave. So it has an opening tag, nothing fancy. It has a closing tag. All right. Header is kind of implying to the browser that this portion itself is going to be the header of the parent tag body. All right. So this is going to uh, imply to the browser that this is going to be the header of the web page itself. All right. Now, inside of the header, there is H1. This is going to imply that this is something of higher priority. All right. Then we have another semantic tag. Opening tag is over here. The closing tag is over here. Then we have different anchor tags inside of it. We already studied anchor tags. Href is taking hashtag. So this basically does no action basically. Okay. We will see how this works. Okay, and there are four anchor tags: home, about, motivate, contact. So this is something we want to render on the HTML front. All right. So if I save this file, if I go to the browser, okay, yeah. So nothing fancy, simple things. Not like it has some awesome styling, but now it has a whole different level of meaning for the browser to understand. All right. So that is the idea. We want the browser to easily understand our code. We want the browser to know that this is going to be the header for the entire page itself, and it is going to have a title that would refer to the title of the web page maybe. Then the nav section is basically for navigating between different pages. So if I click on different links over here, you will see nothing, no action will be happening. Just the base URL will change. So if I click home, it is just going to have that hashtag included. All right. So that is the idea behind giving hashtag. Since we do not have files with this name, we can create one just for demonstration purpose, and we will say home. We'll generate a boilerplate. We'll make it home and home. All right. Maybe capitalize this. Fine. Now, if I want to render reference that, so I can put that over here. And if I click on this, wait a second. Okay, I by mistake I added the wrong file, right? So the path is correct. If I click on this, it should take us to the home page. Or okay, I added it in the wrong place itself. My mistake. I'll add that over here. Make this as hashtag. All right. So mistakes does happen like while you code, things do not work properly. Right now, when I hover on the this part, you can see on the bottom part itself, it is going to show the URL and it is going to take us to home.html now. So if I click on it, it is going to take us to home.html. Fine. We'll come back. I'll go back to the browser where you can keep this, but works, right? So this is something that is going to handle the navigation, internal navigation maybe. So consider you have an Instagram page, you have an organization, you run Instagram basically. So you will have a navigation and it will link to all the pages, all the parts of the Instagram uh, website inside of that navigation itself, right? So that is the idea behind it. Now let's go back to semantics and we'll close this HTML home.html. Now we have something known as main tag. All right. So main tag is something that implies to the browser key. Uh, it implies that it is going to be the main content of the parent. All right. So we'll take this apart and we'll take it to the semantic.html that we are working with and we'll study these things. So main opening tag, the main closing tag, all right. Now it has a header, it has a different h2 header, so it is going to have a lesser priority than h1, but it is going to imply that it is a header, it is a title associated to this parent main tag, right? Then paragraph tag is something that is going to be followed, two paragraphs followed to this title. Then we are going to have a section where we want to render a figure. All right. So we have a figure section and we are doing nothing but the same. We are linking the kiosk.png as an image URL and we are giving it a alternate text as kiosk device. All right. So we can make it smaller case. Then we are using another semantic tag that is figure caption. So in HTML, it is known as fig caption. Inside of this, you can write anything that can be like a caption for this image, right? So if you want to render your image and you want to show your name as well, so you can create a figure section, all right, using the figure tags. Inside of that section, you can link your image using the image tag, and then you can provide your name inside of the fig caption, right? That is the idea. So we studied this. Now there is another thing that is known as an article. All right, article has a opening tag, it has a closing tag, and it has a lot more content inside of it. So as we are moving forward, we are observing a lot of nesting going on inside of the body itself. We have header now, we have main now, and inside of that main section itself, we are having other things that are being nested. So basically, it creates a tree kind of structure inside of the browser. All right. So coming back to the document itself, now this article is also going to have a header for it, right? So when the browser sees this header inside of the article, it will automatically know that this header is associated to the article itself. And it has a H3, comparatively a little lower priority than the above two, all right? And it has the title of the article, right? We can say uh, tutorial, right? Nothing else is coming to my mind. So this can be a title for the article that we want to read. Now there is another semantic tag that is known as section. All right. So section has an opening tag, closing tag, and similarly it takes in more children tags, basically elements, basically. H4 even lesser priority than this. Then a button. Button is a new tag that we are seeing. So this lets us add buttons into our HTML document, right? So if I click on this follow button, it is going to do some action. Right now, I have not specified any action, so it won't do anything. Uh, but that is the idea behind button tag. If you want to create a button in your HTML document, you go ahead and use button tag. All right. Then we have main, another main, right? We are working inside of a main already. Now we have another main, but this is going to be associated to this article tag. Fine. So this main has like a little more paragraph for us to read. Then it has a footer for the article itself because it is inside of the article opening and closing tags. Then we are basically exiting out of the document. Now, if I save this, it is not going to be very much pretty, but it is going to have a better understanding, a better significance for the browser. All right. So that is the entire thing that we are trying to learn. That we are trying to grasp by semantics, right? So we are dividing different portions of the code into different tags or different sections. So so that the browser has uh, like can easily understand your code. All right. Now, lastly, we can move back into the semantics.html that is inside of the mocks folder, and we can pick the footer inside of it. So we did not study uh, form abhi tak. So we will study forms now. So footer is something that is going to be the bottom part, right? So it has a opening tag, it has our closing tag, and we are saying it is going to be a footer for the body tag since it is directly nested inside of the body tag, right? You can see by the lines or vertical lines, we are seeing how things are being nested together. Cool. So this footer has a section. All right, this is a semantic tag. That section uh, has a form inside of it. Now, a form works like this. We do not have a method or attribute, and it is not really required, right? So it will still render just fine. I have a label, which is one kind of a tag, and it takes an attribute for and a value for that is name, and we can create an input for the same, right? It is going to be of type text. So this is how you create an input, right? If I type input, Emmet is going to generate the type automatically for me. If I want to use number, it will do number for me. All right. So we'll see this when we are rendering this. Wait a second. And we are saying placeholder for this input tag is going to be enter name here, and the ID is name. Now this ID is something this for attribute points towards. All right. So we will understand how this works. Moving forward, we have another input section. Basically, it has a label of email, and it is pointing to email, and there is an input tag for the same of type email. Placeholder is going to be enter email here, and the ID just to facilitate this label basically. All right. Then we have an input tag at the end of the form itself, and it is of type submit. All right. So it is also taking a value. This is something that is going to show on the screen for this input tag. All right. So this is going to be kind of a button type of tag that lets us submit the form data, right? So once a user is entering something inside of the form, it is going to take all those data and it is going to submit that form. All right. We can say action. Maybe we will study action. And lastly, we have nothing but a small. Okay. So now I'm using something. All right. Let me just give me a second. What I did was I selected this part. All right. I selected this. Then I control plus shift plus P. All right. Wrap abbreviation. Now I can write any HTML tag that I want to wrap this content with. I can use span tag and enter. All right. So this lets us basically uh, wrap my different content that I have. So a span tag is another type of tag, nothing special. It takes in content, it has a closing tag as well, and it is going to render on the screen. All right. Now we studied everything from the main to the footer itself. Now if I save this and if we go back to the browser, the footer is something of this sort now. All right. Uh, where do we have like sorry yeah. So footer is like for this, right? So over here, the main section is ending. Inside of the footer, we have this form, and it is generating this form for us, right? The placeholder is visible over here, and if I click on the label itself, it is still going to focus me on the input because I provided that for attribute, right? So if I go to the form and if I remove this for attribute, so it is going to show, but it is not going to be linked to this thing. So if I try to click this multiple times, it is selecting that part, but it is not focusing me on the input element itself. So I want that to be there. Now if I click it, it is going to work flawlessly. and that is the idea behind the linking between label and input tags. And we have a submit button. You can see the UI is kind of a, like how buttons render, right? And the value is what it is showing on the button. If I submit this, it is not going to do anything, just re-renders the same page. All right. So that is the default behavior with the form. Then the span tag and the content inside of it is being rendered uh, in the bottom part. All right. Now we have possibly cleared all the semantic tags, and we even created a small structure of HTML document. We also studied form tag. We saw label, what is the significance of for attribute. We saw at input tags and the submit type of input tag. So we need not have to go through it again. Moving down the line, we will study CSS now and how it is going to fit inside of the picture and how we can like beautify the HTML document that we created for us. So let's learn about the CSS basics first. So first of all, we need to know the concept behind selectors, right? So selectors are nothing but ways to select HTML elements out of the document, right? Because without selecting particular elements, we won't be able to provide the right styles for it. So selectors, learning about the selectors becomes very much crucial when we work with CSS. And we will see different selectors when we start styling our HTML document. All right. Then, what are the ways to write CSS? There are three significant ways. One is using the style attribute, which lets us add inline styling. One is using the style tag itself, and it is going to be present inside of the head, and it is known as internal styling. Then we have linking of external style sheets. Okay, so basically we create a different file for CSS and we link it to the HTML document, and it is able to do the same thing. All right. So we'll have a look at all these three, and how can we do that? Uh, I'm unable to copy this text, so we will basically do that. Like this only. Simply how I want to do it. Okay. So I can create a style attribute for this paragraph, and if I want to add a color to it, I can use the color property. All right. I'll let you know what property actually is, and I can give it any color that I want to go with. So maybe aqua or maybe aquamarine. All right. Aquamarine. All right. So if I save this now, if I go to the browser. Okay. So the text is not a lot visible, so I'll make it red. It is not a good color, but we can play with different contrast. We can play with different colors. Right? And if I save this now, it is going to take that color, right? So this is how I can add inline styling, and this is using attribute of style. So basically, if I want to add the same style to all the paragraphs inside of our document, I have to paste this to all the paragraphs, and then that will work, right? Now all the paragraphs have the same color. But this is not an ideal way to do things, right? Because if imagine if I had hundreds of paragraphs in my entire web page or maybe website itself, right? So how would I have done that, right? To copy this thing to entirely every HTML paragraph tag. That would have been a hectic job to do. So there is a way to like redo this thing without worrying about the breaking, right? How can we do? I removed all the styles. Now it is going to be normal HTML. Now if I want to add a style, I can go to the head section, right? And I can create a style uh, element basically because there is a HTML opening and closing tag, and we are going to write some content inside of it. So I'm going to select the paragraph tag. So this is our first look at selection. All right. I'll use the P. Do not specify empty rule sets. It is giving us some warning, but it is going to work out, so it is fine. And we can give the color over here as whatever color we want to go with. For now, let's go with red, right? Now, how this works, right? This entirely is known as a declaration. So this is a style declaration. It is selecting the paragraph tag inside of the document. Okay. It is adding a property of color and it is specifying a value of red as the color. All right. So it is going to select paragraphs inside of the document and it is going to give them a color of red. That is what we are understanding by this. And now if we go to the browser, we can see all the paragraphs were able to receive that color property. So this is one way to add internal style, right? Using the style tags itself. Now, if we want to style something else, like if we want to give the this nav, a background color, we can do that. So I'm getting Emmet related suggestions. We can say maybe blue, right? Blue violet. Anything works, right? So it is not clearly visible. Now what I can say is maybe color should be a little more poppy or a little towards the bright side so that it is visible through this. So uh, although it did not apply because it is inside of the anchor tag. So we'll have to style the anchor tag. So let's select the anchor tag and let's give it a style of this. And now it is going to apply, right? So anchor tags by default, as the children do not take the parents' color, the properties that we provide inside of the thing. We need to like specifically select the anchor tags and give it the styles that we want. And we want to give it text decoration of none. This is going to remove the underline that is there over at the nav bar. What we can do is we can play with the layout of this. If we want to play around with the layout, it will require some knowledge of Flexbox or grid layout. So I can do display, flex, all right, and justify content as evenly, space evenly, all right. So it is going to evenly space them in the horizontal direction. All right. We will study more about layout properties or display properties moving forward in the tutorial. But this is the idea behind how uh, moving ahead from inline styling and internal styling would work, right? So we can see inside of the head section, head tags, we are having a style tag. Inside of that, we are using selectors to select different elements out of the document and give them different colors, right? So that is the idea. Now, what if we want this to be a little more organized? What if this HTML document grows and we add styles over here? This document will have an enormous lines of code then. It will be like less readable. So there is another way to take the styles out, remove the style tag because we are going to use something different now. And we are going to create an CSS file. We will name it as maybe styles.css. All right. And we will place that all the styles that we had written inside of the head, inside of the style tag over here, and we will save this file. All right. Now we know this is a CSS file since it has a .css extension. If I want to link whatever code, whatever CSS styling I have written inside of this HTML document, I would need to use a link of CSS. All right. And it is going to use a rel attribute. It stands for relationship. So basically, it is relating to a style sheet because we are working with cascading style sheet, right? So it is going to link to a style sheet, and how it is going to find that style sheet? It is going to use this href, all right? and inside of the href, I'm going to give the path of the styles.css file. Now, if I save this file, uh, uh, the changes are not being shown. If I save this file now without the link, the changes will revert back. Then, if I uncomment this again and save it again, the styles are being picked up. So this is the another way to add external style. All right. So we learned about the basics of CSS now, and now it is time to go into a little more detail and learn about box model. All right. So while working with like HTML tags, every HTML tag converts to an HTML element. All right. So once there is a combination of opening tag, uh, closing tag, and the content inside of it, it becomes an HTML element, right? So every HTML element has a box model. All right. Everything is box inside of HTML. So if we go to the browser, if I go to the inspection tool, if I hover on different things, see, you can see rectangular box, right? Everything is inside of a box. There is no curvature, nothing like that. Everything is going to be solid box. So this is known as the box model of HTML elements. All right. Now there are layers to this box model. Firstly, the space that is being occupied by the content. All right. That is the space that is the content exactly taken. Basically, if you have a paragraph tag, like over here, the blue region is something that the content is taken. Then there is another layer that encloses the content that basically adds padding. Padding means spacing, kind of room inside of the uh, element itself. All right. So padding region. If we can see, there is no padding over here. If you want to observe padding, we need to add padding to paragraph tags. Padding of, let's add one rem. Okay. Do not worry if you do not know rem. We can go with 10 pixels for now, pixel values, right? Now we can see there is another layer now. There is content layer. Now there is a slight light green layer that is representing the padding. And since we used cascading style sheet, it is also going to happen for all the other paragraph tags, right? So this is the enclosing region that adds a room inside of the element itself. Then to pack everything together, there is border. All right. So border is the layer that we can add. So border, to add border, we can do 2 pixel. So the width of the border will be 2 pixel. The type of the border is going to be solid, matlab continuous, and the color of the border is going to be black. Fine. If I save this, all the paragraph tags now will have three parts, that is the content, the padding, and the 2 pixel enclosing part of as border, right? So that is the box model. Over that, out of that, now the element has ended. If we want to introduce spacing uh, between one paragraph tag to another paragraph tag or one HTML element to another HTML element, we set a region of margin, right? So let's suppose if we want the paragraph to have some margin from the left, right? So we need to add that inside of the styling margin. And since we want left side margin, we can specify left and we can take a 10 pixel as margin. You can observe if I save that file, it will slightly shift away, all right? And it is going to show that on the left, all right? First of all, I will do one thing. I will remove the margin 0 pixel. Now there is no margin. As you can see, there is no orange region now to observe. By default, uh, HTML gives some margin to paragraphs. We have removed that by specifying margin as 0 pixel. Now, if we want to add our default margin to the left, we can use the left wala margin and we can give the value as per our requirement. and now it is going to have a margin that we can observe in like this orange layer. Perfect. So that is the entire box layout. Content is the innermost part, the content itself, which you place inside of the parent tag. Padding is the room for the element itself, like it will be well spaced out if you introduce good padding. Border is to create a fence around the HTML element. Margin is to distribute, like separate these HTML elements from one another. Right now, if you can see, the HTML, the paragraphs are sticking together because I removed the margin from it, right? So if I remove these two lines, the default margin that is set by the HTML, it is going to come back, and now it is going to have this orange region, right? So if I click on this, we go to this uh, computed part, we can see these three regions. This is the content, this is the 10 pixel uh, padding, then the 2 pixel border, then the 16 pixel margin that is set by the browser itself. All right. So we studied box model pretty much in detail, and that is something that we play around with to space things out properly in a layout. So knowing the basics of box model is very much crucial, and hopefully that was well understood. And let's move forward into display properties. As I mentioned, key for like playing with the layouts, we need to know display properties. So display property determines the behavior of the children elements. All right. So what do I mean by behavior? So it means by the spacing, their layout behavior is determined by the value that you provide to the property of display. All right. There are a number of display properties that we can use, and it has different behavioral changes that reflects on the HTML document. All right. Then display properties ultimately follows us to create desired layouts. Okay, allows us. Okay, so to create a desired layout, basically, to not write a bad CSS, we need to use display properties in a rightful manner so that our content, our layout is well distributed, well maintained. All right. So let's study layouts now. What we can do is we have already seen one, so we will try to learn about that, and then we will try to learn a little more display properties. So we know that we are working with this HTML file, semantics.html. Let's try to add some styling as per our requirement. Right now, I do not want to add color to the nav bar. So I will take this line of code, and I will actually provide this inside of body's immediate child header. All right. This is what I mean by the right arrow. I'm going to provide the color over here, and now the header is going to have the entire color. Right? Now, as you can see, there is some default padding going on. I do not want that padding. How can I remove that? So to do that, in the uppermost part, E0 and M0. I'm going to remove all the default padding or margins that are provided by HTML because I want everything to be written from scratch. I do not want to rely on the styles provided by HTML itself. I will remove, scrape those things out. Wherever I require padding, I'll add that manually, and it will be full control, fully in my control, right? So that is the idea behind removing the padding and margin over here. Now what I can do is I can set the max width as maybe okay. Let's not do max width. I'll set the width as 100%. So I will use different units for like spacing things out. Right now it won't do any changes. I am just signifying key this header is going to take the 100% of viewport width. All right. So that is the idea behind this width. Now what I want to do is I want there to be some padding inside of this, right? I want the semantics not to stick to the very top. How can I do that? So I can make this firstly, if this is a title, I want this to be in a uh, horizontal alignment with the nav section. So I can make this as display flex. So display flex. Display is a property that we are studying. Flex is a value that we are given. All right. So when we specify flex, it is going to loosen all the layout bindings and it is going to take everything together. All right. And stick them together. That is what we are implying. If I remove this part for now, let's comment this out. To comment this out, I use control forward slash. All right. And if I save this now, you will see this became it came on a same line kind of. So since I made the header, coming back to the HTML, I made this header as flex. So whatever children it had, the first children is this h1 tag, the second child is this nav bar, right? So this became loose and they uh, basically came in and stick together, basically. Okay. So what I did was by default it has block scope. We will try to understand what is block. I'll remove comment this out as well. Now we will see this is the default behavior how it is going to render. Fine. What do I mean by block? Block is something that takes the entire width. All right. H1, although the content is just uh, pretty much ending over here, where I am hovering my wait a second. The content is just this much. But if I inspect this, it is going to take the entire width. This is what is meant by block width, right? Block scope. The element is of block type. Now, uh, now if we want to study something which is different, we can study this tab. This anchor is inline, fine. It is not taking the entire width. What is taking the entire width? It is taking the nav is taking the entire width. Inside of it, the childrens are inline. It has a display of inline. So if I change the anchor tag, the display property of anchor tag, and if I keep that as block, it is going to move to other lines. It is going to take the default behavior like other HTML elements, right? So that is the idea behind it. This is some by default it is inline block, right? And it is going to stick together again like a default way to render anchor tags. So that is the idea. Now what we can do is we can try to flex this around. We will say key headers children will be flexed, they will be loosened from their place and they will become inline. Okay. So if I flex that, it becomes inline and they share this same line kind of thing. All right. Although they have their same block, the nav is going to have their that block itself. But see, it is not taking the block scope now. It is just taking inline styles that it requires, right? Whatever the spacing the children will require, it is going to take that much spacing. Now, if we want to align this, align items. If we want to vertically align these into center, we can use this property value pair and we can go back to see the change, right? Now it is being vertically aligned properly. Now, if we want to separate this out properly, justify content space between, right? So this is going to add the entire whatever space is left between the children elements. It is going to add that. So basically, it separates the two children. This is the H1 tag, and this is the nav section, basically.
Alright, going back to the browser with this setting, we do not require the width to be 100% since it is already block scope, and we will just introduce some 10 pixel padding just to keep it uniform. And as soon as we save this file and go back to the browser, we will be able to see that padding is reflecting on the screen. Now what we can see is the spacing is kind of aligned, and we want to have the navbar should have a little more padding, like gap in between. So we'll bring back the flexbox, although anchor tags are still inline, but flexbox will let us introduce some gaps that we can use. So we'll just go with some gap, for now 10 pixel, just to keep it uniform, or maybe this is a little low. We'll make it 20 pixel so that it is like well separated. Yeah, this looks fine, and with this only the layout looks good. Just we need to change the header uh, color to make it aligned with the color of nav items, right? So we do not okay, sorry, we need to use color for giving the text the right color. Now this looks a good color mix, the contrast is good and the alignment is good, because we used flexbox both in the header as well as in the navbar. Now we need to come down and see how we can work with other display properties, and we need to take everything in action. So what we can do is we can demonstrate this inside of the main section, since we have two paragraph tags right here. So what we can do is to maybe lay this out in a column fashion, we can use a display property, and firstly we will wrap this, because we want to select this first, uh, as display properties only work for behavioral change of children elements. So we'll wrap this with a div element, and we'll give it a id, or maybe just a class name to select the children paragraph tags. We'll give the class name as column, and as soon as we save this, we should be able to access this parent div, and we should be able to select that using the class selector inside of the styles.css file. So let's select that using the selector. We use prefix of period symbol or full stop, and we add the class name that we have provided in the HTML document. Then we create the declaration block. Now we can give any display property, and now we are gonna work with grid display, and this will help us to lay them out in a different manner, and to actually demonstrate that we'll have to work with templating. We need to create templates that can distribute this grid into different columns, right? So grid template columns is the property key, and the value can be 1fr 1fr. This just means key we are taking two evenly distributed columns, and as soon as we save this and we go to the browser, the children tags of the div element that has class column will be laid out in a grid format, and they should have even width in a single row. And the first tag should be in the first column, and the second paragraph tag should be in the second column. So we can see the similar output that we expected. So the display property is working. Now what we can do is we can move ahead, and we can try to style the entire page, and we can maybe work on the responsiveness, right? So as we can see, the responsive view is just all right for the enlarged size, but if we go to mobile view, it is not working. So if we select iPhone 12 Pro, the responsiveness is breaking. What we can do is we can play around with display properties, the grid that we have created, and we would try to introduce media queries for that. And media queries are means by which we can select a particular device width, screen size width, and depending on that width we can introduce some styles, right? So we can select width over here, which is 487 pixel, and we can introduce a new style for our column class, and we will give it a template grid grid template rows as 1fr and 1fr, because we want to distribute this in rows now and not columns. Now if we save this and go back to the browser, it should pick up that part for the styles, although it is not picking it up because we also need to change the column behavior, because it is set to 1fr 1fr. We need to make it as a single fr 1fr, right? So it will, this specifies that only a single column is going to be there for the width of 487, and 2 rows can be there. So we are getting the similar output on the screen. So this is how we can fix layouts, and we can move between responsive design. And as soon as we reach that breakpoint, right, the breakpoint that is mentioned in the media query, it will shift from column view to row view. So that is the idea of media queries, and that is how it works. Also, media queries are usually written in the very bottom section of the code, because the above code is then overwritten depending on the screen size. Alright, and as soon as we hit the breakpoint, that is 487, we are able to see that styles to take effect. Right, now we can go back, and this is the media query, and we have placed it at the very bottom. And this is how display properties work, and how we can work with responsiveness, and how we can create separate layout for separate screen sizes. That is the idea behind how responsiveness works. And now we have another slide where we have media queries. Although we covered a little bit about media queries, we will see more in action, but we will try to bring our focus towards positioning as well, and we will study how we can create better layouts using positioning and media queries. Let's go back to the code base, and let's see how we can style this entire page in a well uniform manner, so that it is kind of better to look at, and we are also learning about different CSS elements. Now what we can do is we can introduce some comments that will help us to distinguish between different parts of the CSS code. So since we have created navbar and written the styles for it, and similarly we will try to incorporate more comments as soon as we work with different things. I introduced another comment for mobile screen view, and let's now see. Okay, we have the main section starting from here, where we have created the class name as column. So we'll name this as main, and then we should be able to style that part and maybe introduce some styling. We know that main is an immediate child of body tag, therefore we can select that, and we can introduce 10 pixel padding, so that it will add some room to whatever elements are inside of the main element, right? And as we can see, we remove the paragraph styling, and it is kind of looks like it has blend in. We will try to fix that, and we'll take everything step by step. Firstly, let's try to fix the header that says the semantics are of the page, or like something. So we'll make that kind of senseful. We'll also give it a class name. Okay, sorry, we'll go with the ID, because we want to select keep it unique, and we'll style that using the hashtag, which is a prefix required to select an ID based element from HTML document. Then inside of the declaration, we can give the text decoration as underline for giving an underline to it. And now we will change the content and make it something reasonable, right? So we are here to learn, so let's keep it as let's learn. Moreover, we'll add some padding to it, only y direction padding. So we will go ahead with a shorthand, and it will be 10 pixel in y axis and 0 pixel or 0 in x axis. So vertically it will have 10 pixel from top and bottom, but from right and left it will be 0 pixels. So this is a shorthand that we can use to write paddings. Also it will work similarly for margins. Now what we can see is we want to style the paragraph tag so that it is well visible. Now we know that paragraphs are nested inside of the column class name element, so we can use a combination selector. This is gonna take the class name as column, and whatever children inside of it has a tag name of p are gonna get the styling that we are gonna provide in this declaration itself. So we are going to firstly go ahead with the border that we had. Now we will make it dotted 1 pixel and we will make it gray. So that is reflecting on the screen. What we can do ahead of this is we can introduce a gap in the column itself, so that it will be well separated and will be easier for us to look at. Now we can give a padding inside of the paragraph element itself. That should make the text more visible and readable to our eyes. This is not a perfect layout or a design, but everything we are doing in the code is taking effect. Now what we can do is we can take this image as well as the figure caption text, and we can try to place them in the middle of the screen, right? So we'll introduce another comment in the code, and we'll write that as figure, and we'll select the figure with the tag name itself, since there are no other elements with the same tag name in the entire document. If there would have been other figure tags, we would have given some class name or IDs to it, but for now, for this demonstration, we will just go ahead with the tag name and it will work just fine. So we'll firstly make it grid, and since we want to center it, we will use place item center, and this is a property that should properly take that the contents, that the children of the figure tag to the middle of the screen. Now when we are done with that, we can work on the article and we can try to style that. So as we can see, the article tag has an opening tag over there. We can select that with the tag name itself. So we'll create another comment just to modularize our CSS code, and we'll select the article with the tag name itself, just like figure, and we'll give it a flex property. And as you can see, the layout will get messed up because we have not properly configured what we want to see. So firstly we need to change the direction to column for it to take effect. Now it reverted back to how we want to place it, and since we introduce flex as the display property, we can use gap, and it will make the gapping very uniform for the children inside of the article. Now what we can do is, whatever things are nested inside, firstly we can try to make the content kind of reasonable. So let's say this article is about responsiveness and it is written by Jamil, so we will make those text changes, and we will give ID to the follow button so that we are able to select that using the ID selector in the CSS file. And similarly we will move our way down to paragraph tag as well, and we will try to style those in a good way. But if we try to centrally align these things, it will actually happen in y-axis because we reverse the direction, so there is no change, right? Now if I align this to the center, this will actually do the horizontal alignment. So if I specify center over here, it is gonna center everything to the center of the screen, but that is not something we would want. So we'll keep it as default and we'll remove this alignment line, or maybe we can just specify it as start, right? So start is something, a value that specifies to HTML document that it should stick to the very leftmost side. Now BG color, we can go ahead with a BG color for the article to be more visible. Firstly, we'll go ahead with gray, and let's just introduce a little bit of border radius, and it should be 10 pixel uniform with every other padding and other values that we are going with. This should like add some curvature to the border corners. Now we want the margin to be there as 0 from above, but auto, just to see the behavior, although it is not changing anything, so we do not need that piece of line. But the color did take effect, so it is kind of cool, but the color is not so vibrant. We'll try to change the text color. This too looks not too good, so we'll try to revert back. And since it is an article tag and there is no nav element or anchor tag inside of it, everything is taking the effect of color. So if I specify color to the article itself, so it is going to change the text color for every textual content inside of the article. To select the section, we know that article has immediate children named as section. We can make it as flex, we can align that as center, we can introduce some gap just for better layout, and 40 pixel would be good. So this is how we are going to separate the name and the follow button, and slowly it is going to look better as we add some padding. Now we can work on the color, and we can try to play with the contrast, and it should give us a better color than this. Alright, this looks a little better, so we can go ahead with this color itself. And coming back to our document, now we do not need this footer, so I'll remove this because it just has a text of like, doesn't add any value. Now we can go down to the footer, and we can work on how we can design or lay this out properly. So firstly, we will go and introduce a comment in the CSS file for the footer, and we will add a footer name tag and the declaration for the styles. What we can do is we can make it a display grid, and we can place everything in the center itself, and that should properly take everything to the center. And what we can do is we can introduce some padding from the x-axis, so it should be 10 pixel and separated by 0, so that y-axis is affected but x-axis is not affected. Now moving forward, what we can do is we can observe that the footer has 2 children, and we want to make it as flex and flex column, but we do not have to do it because we have already used the display property. We can give the gap and it should take effect. So any display property that we work with automatically comes along with a gap property that we can use for introducing even gap between the children of the selected element. Right now, as we can see, the things are falling into place, and the form itself is not responsive. So how can we make it responsive? Firstly, we will try to select the form itself, and maybe we can try to add some custom styling for that inside of the media query itself. So what we can do is we can go ahead and firstly observe what is happening in the form, although maybe we do not need to add anything. Firstly, we will select everything, all the input tags and the button at the bottom, and we'll wrap all three with a div. That should make the scope of those things as block. Now since we have everything online, let's see it in desktop view. So The alignment is all right. We just need to have some padding or room inside of the form itself. So we do not need media queries for this. We'll directly select the form, and we will go ahead with display properties and introduce some gap. Firstly, display should be flex. Now we should also give the flex direction as a column, because we want to align the elements in a horizontal manner, and we can add some gap that should make everything aligned properly and distributed in a good way. Moreover, we can introduce an ID to the button as submit button, so that we are able to select that and bring it to the center of the screen. So how we are going to do that is, we will select the button and we will text align that to the center itself, and this should work on the viewport. As we can see, the button has been aligned to the center, and the form will stand responsive, and we do not have to worry about that now. Let's see. So here we can observe that the nav bar is actually breaking. So firstly, we will try to fix the nav bar, and how we can do that is, we can write media queries for that. So firstly, we will go to the HTML just to observe what is the structure of header, and we'll give the nav bar an ID as desktop nav bar, so that we are able to only view this nav bar, and we want to make it only visible on a desktop device. And we want to instead have a button for smaller screen devices, which upon clicking brings the nav bar to view. Alright, so we'll give a menu button to the button that is present, and what we can do is firstly select the form, the desktop nav bar, and make the display as invisible. So what we can do is, we can use the display property, and we can use the none value, and when we go to the screen size that is lesser than the pixel width is less than 487, then it will be disappearing from the screen, right? So that is the behavior we will be receiving because of this, because of the media query that we have written. Now what else we can do is, we only want the menu button to be visible when it is in a smaller screen device, right? So we do not want both the nav bar and the menu button at the same time. As soon as the nav bar disappears, we want the menu button to be of display block. That is how it will be visible, and outside of the media query, we can say display as none, and this should give us the similar behavior that we are wanting to see. Right now the nav bar is there, but the menu item is not there, and as soon as we shrink this down, the nav bar will disappear and the menu button will come. So that is that. Now we can move forward, and we can work on the on a way to actually make the menu item visible, right? So firstly, what we need to do is, as soon as we are in a smaller size screen, we want to select the h1 tag in a similar manner and give it a font size of large. Now as soon as we hit a breakpoint, it will go to a smaller width, right? Smaller font size. So right now we can observe that something is breaking the responsive design, as there is bleeding out of image right over here. So what we need to do is, we need to contain this image in a specific width. So what we can do is, we can add firstly we will add some padding in the y direction, so that there is some spacing from the contents around, and then we can go ahead and give the image a width and a height of auto for larger sized screens. And when the screen is of width lesser than 487, we want the image to have a specific width like we can go ahead with anything that is lesser than 487. 300 would be perfect, so we will do 300 for both, and we can try to work with the aspect ratio, but maybe that is not mandatory, so we'll remove this line as of now, and this should fix the responsive design. Now nothing is bleeding out of the screen, and the image is being contained inside of an 300 mark itself. And as soon as we extend the screen size and the breakpoint is of a desktop screen, then it will revert back to the auto width and height. So that was kind of the idea behind how media queries can work. Now to make the button actually be workable, right, we need to add some elements that need to be visible on the screen. So we can do that by using a hover property on the button itself. So whenever we hover on the menu button, we would be showing a menu drop down that we can create using positioning. So let's go ahead into the code, and let's go ahead and see how we can make that work. So to actually make it work, we need to add a block inside of the button itself. We'll make it a div, and we'll give that div an ID as menu, so that we are able to select that. Or okay, so ID would be better, so we will go ahead with ID. We should not go ahead with class, and we'll name it as menu. Now inside of this, we will just pick all the anchor elements that are there above, and we will place that inside of this as well. And now this should let us see the nav elements just inside of the button. So as soon as we save this file, right now I did not save it, so the behavior is as soon as I save this file, it should be visible. So right now, since we have not worked with positioning, it is being laid out inside of the button itself, and anchor tags are inline, so they are being displayed in a single line itself. Now how we can make it work is, we can add a menu section inside of our CSS code, and we can start writing some display properties that would help us to determine the behavior of the menu item. So firstly, on the desktop view, we do not want to see the menu item, but just for the case of styling, we'll comment that out for now, and we'll give the display as flex, and we'll set the direction as column, so that it is like aligned in a column fashion. And then we can introduce some gap. We'll keep 5 pixel for this, not a lot. So what we can do now is, we can actually see, since it is a children of the button itself, it is being flexed inside of the button itself. So what we can do is, we can position this absolutely, and what it will do is, it will take the menu div out of the content of the document, and it won't hinder the button and its body, since it has been pulled out of the document itself. Now we can use properties like top, right, left, and bottom. Here we will work with top and left, and we will specify some experimental values just to see how it is going to look like. And as soon as we apply that, if we go to the desktop screen, it should not be present, because we have made the button only visible when the screen width is lesser than 487, right? So whenever the button is visible on the screen, then only there will be the text. Here the text is actually there, although we are not able to properly see that because of the color. So what we need to do is, we need to increase the Z index. Z index is something that lets us place the items on top of another. So as soon as we introduce Z index as 999, it will be above everything else. And now we can give it a background color, so that we are able to see that in view, and we can add some padding as well as some border radius that will make it look a little bit prettier. So 10 pixel as we are doing for everything else. As you can see, it is visible on the screen. As soon as we hit the endpoint, it is going to be invisible because the menu item disappears from the screen as soon as the screen size increases from the breakpoint that we have specified, which is 487, right? So we can hop back inside of the code now, and as you can see, we want to relatively or absolutely position that to the button itself, and if we comment out the display property, it will be showing on the screen. Now what we want to do is we want to relatively position this inside of the button itself, not to the viewport. And as we can see, the default behavior is if we absolutely position something, the outermost parent that has a relative positioning, it sticks or it gets displaced with respect to that. So we can actually see that in action inside of MDN over here. And as we can see, the default behavior is of a static element, and static is placed just by default, and as soon as we change it to relative, it is going to be pulled out of the document. It is not going to be pulled out of the document, it is going to be displaced from the position it is going to appear in, and the top and the left value whatever has been specified, like I am playing around with that and it is showing that on the screen, right? So depending on those values, it is going to be displaced from the place it is going to be actually present on. So that is the behavior the relative positioning actually brings about. Right now we can now go to the absolute positioning. This is totally going to take that document out of the document itself, the element out of the document itself. As you can see, the other two divs got stuck together, and the div that we have absolutely positioned is 40 pixels from top of the screen and 40 pixels left from the left of the screen. And as soon as I change that value, it is going to take effect, and if we keep it as top 0 and left 0, it is going to stick on the very left, and we can also make it stick to the very right by changing the value as right, so it is going to stick to the right side now. So this is how like absolute positioning works. But now when we scroll, right, it is going to scroll away as well. Similarly for the relative positioning, it does not do anything fancy. But if we work with sticky positioning, and it specifies 20 pixel from the top, so as soon as it reaches the top as 20 pixel, it is going to stick to the document over there, and it is not going to be displaced from there. So that is how different positioning values bring about different behavior to the layout. You can study more on the MDN document and actually visualize all those things properly, just like how I showed in this tutorial. Now what we can do is we can come back to the code and we can see what can be done. And let's see, we need to make it display none. Firstly, let's not do that. Firstly, we need to find the button itself. Okay, so we'll make the button relative. As I said, anything that is relatively positioned, and the inside children can have absolute positioning, and they will be displayed in respect to the relatively positioned element. So over here, if we make the button as a relative, we can see the div that has been absolutely positioned moves in accordance to the button as per our requirement. Let's move this code above so that it is present in the same section for us to follow. Now we can work on how this is going to be appearing. And firstly, let's play with the experimental values and make it like aligned properly, so it is in the viewport. Right now it is overlapping, so we need to increase the top value. Let's go ahead with 30 pixel maybe, and that should be good enough. So it is working properly, but right now the menu is always going to be present on the screen. We only want to see the menu when the the menu button is hovered, right? So as we can see, if I change the display property to none, it is not going to take effect, because just down the line I have rewritten the display property. So I need to remove that, and as soon as I do that, the document is removed out of uh, uh, the element is removed out of the document. Now we can actually have a hover pseudo property on the button, so that whenever the button is hovered, we want to specify some change in the behavior of display inside of the menu, right? So let's take in everything that is like relevant to menu inside of the hover property itself, and let's keep the menu as display none, and whenever we click on it, it will kind of register that as a hover, because kind of hover is when I like drag my mouse inside of the button, but right now it is in mobile view. So whenever I click or click outside, it is going to register the hover event. So that is how we are able to the positioning take effect as soon as responsive view kicks in, right? So this is not a totally functional drop down, but this is something closer to what you would actually develop with the help of HTML and CSS. So that was it for the front end. To end this out, I will just go and dictate to you the roadmap that I have created for beginners, and if you follow this, you will be like moving ahead to become intermediate, and similarly if you practice well enough, you will become a good developer. Front end development के लिए firstly you need to spend around 3 months of time for HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and I have crash courses on all three of this, and you can follow anything you want, and if you want anyone else that you want to follow, you can look for documentation as well as other content creators that would be like helpful for you. And meanwhile, in this 3 months, also try to go through with the tailwind, the bootstrap and sass. These are like things that are basically making your life easier, but you need to have the basics cleared about CSS. So you need to spend around 3 months of time in HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then in intermediate, you need to learn bootstrap, tailwind as well as sass, and this will help you to work on your projects in a easier manner. Plus you need to have some CSS knowledge, so you cannot skip anything. When you're done with this 3 months sprint, you need to move to React.js. Try to learn that through project based learning, and try to implement as many projects as possible. And meanwhile, try to learn tools that work with React.js like Redux or anything, even incorporate tailwind in React itself. Also, when you're done with React, try to work with dynamic data that you can get from external APIs, right? So you can go to free API providers. One of those are Rapid API. So if you go to Rapid API and you go to the first link, you'll find the dashboard or the landing page for the same, and you can see like different APIs that are exposed on this portal, and you can incorporate that inside of your project itself. And if you are able to pull that off, you can say you are kind of a relevant front-end developer. Then meanwhile, you have worked like for a lot of time, you need to polish your responsiveness skills. So try to learn concepts regarding responsive design, and since I have kept that as intermediate, that is because you need to do that in the entire process, and once you are ready, you can prepare for interviews. That is it for front end. Now we can move into backend roadmap, and backend should take around 2 months, and it will be Node.js, whatever you choose, Node.js, Django, or any Java based backend system. If you want to learn Node.js, I already have tutorials on JavaScript and Node.js which are convenient to follow. Then try to learn how to build APIs. Also, this is also present in the Node.js tutorial, so you can follow that. When you're done with that, try to learn about routing and how templating works, right? So it is kind of a process. Whenever you kickstart your backend journey, you're gonna learn everything in an initial manner, but I want you to create scalable, bigger APIs with time, right? So work on projects, try to scale up your APIs, try to incorporate different things, right? Create projects and use different free templates. Around 2 months, take that much time. Learn some DSA, try to figure out good logic, try to optimize your backend code, integrate databases for your API, and learn how to query your data in an optimized manner. Then you can go ahead and prepare for interviews, and that would be it. The front end roadmap as well as back end roadmap. Lastly, to close this out, thank you very much for joining in. Hopefully, this was valuable for you. This is a crash course that you can follow for HTML CSS. If you like the tutorial, you can find me on LinkedIn and you can connect with me. As well as if you really liked it, give it a like, share it with your friends, and also subscribe to the channel. That would be it from my end. You can also follow the different tutorials that I am uploading. Hopefully you will look forward to the other uploads I make.